Hello, it's Amanda Keller here. I've started a new podcast with my best friend, Anita McGregor. Anita has a real job. Who knew? She's a forensic psychologist. She's sometimes intelligent. Well, she is most of the time. We spend a lot of our weekends together walking my dog. We're having a glass of wine. We're having 1,000 cups of tea. But we talk about everything. Sometimes we're smart, sometimes we're ridiculous, but we thought that the things that we discuss are probably the things that everyone else is talking about too. Here's a little taste of what you can expect. I'll see you at the end. Hello, I'm Amanda Keller. You might know me from, various media outlets, TV, radio. I do the breakfast show with Jonesy on WSFM. But I thought I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine called Anita McGregor, my best friend in the whole damn universe. And we thought we'd like to do a podcast together. Hello, Anita.
Hello.
Hosting a children's show together. This is weird, us sitting opposite a table. Normally when we're chatting, we're walking my dog, we're having a glass of wine somewhere, we're making a gazillion cups of tea.
That is our lives.
That's our lives. I have this kind of media frivolous job. You have a grown-up job. What is it you do again?
I am a forensic psychologist.
And when people hear forensics, do they assume that you're digging up bodies in some kind of research facility?
Either that or they think that I'm interviewing dead people, neither of which is actually true.
Hopefully not today. I'll just check. No, so far, so good.
So far, so good.
So what actually is a forensic psychologist?
So forensic means in the forum. So anything to do with the legal system. So for civil or criminal issues, we see offenders, we see victims. I've worked with police in Canada, lots and lots of things. So anything really to do with the court system.
But at the moment you're working in Australia. You have an unusual Australian accent, let's just say.
I'll admit that.
So you've been here from Canada for how long?
17 years. And strangely enough, I met you probably in the first month or so of coming to Australia.
When you first saw me, though, it was unusual, wasn't it?
It was very...
I wasn't drinking.
That was very unusual, let me tell you. No, it was what became a mutual friend of ours, Jackie, who asked me to go and watch a Dancing with the Stars episode. And I didn't know what Dancing with the Stars was. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know anybody in Australia.
What a dream. I dream of living like that.
It was crazy. So went over there, and Jackie was dressed in a ballroom gown made out of drapes, and she was
so was I, and I was on the show.
I was going to say, but it was extraordinary in meeting you because I had no context for it. I had no context about the Australian situation, who was who, and all those kinds of things. So it was a lovely, great time to get to know you, and really we have been friends since then.
Forged at the hip, we really are. So that's kind of who we are and our history. But often when we're walking and we're talking about things, we talk about things that matter in our lives, and we talk about silly things we've read during the week or things we've watched or things we've read. And we thought, why don't we share that with everyone? Because I reckon everyone else is going through the same kind of stuff.
Just as confused as we are.
Just as confused as we are. Initially, I wanted to call this tea and therapy. I'd provide the tea and you'd provide the therapy. But it was thought that maybe people might think it's an actual therapy show. And as
Absolutely.
You'll see, this certainly won't be that.
Far from it.
So hello and welcome to Double A Chattery.
Welcome.
I read an article in a New York newspaper the other day, and it was about a new bookshop, and it was called The Ripped Bodice.
Ooh, tell me more.
I will, Anita. Look at what I'm wearing right now, Ripped Bodice and more. And The Ripped Bodice is a new bookshop that is all about romance novels. And the thing that struck me was that the queue to go into their big opening day went all the way around the block. And it said in the articles that more women than ever are reading romance-based books in a way that many people aren't even aware that they're romance novels. But for example, last year there was a 52.4 increase in romance novels in comparison to other fiction categories which were down by over 10%. So this is the one category that's going through the roof. A list of 8 of the 15 books on the current New York Times paperback bestseller list are romantic fiction. Virgin River, for example, the TV series, Bridgerton, those, they're giant juggernauts. I'd even put Yellowstone on that list.
Men in Wrangler jeans, man.
Oh, see, in Australia, Wrangler jeans were just the daggy jeans that the boys you knew wore to the school formal. In Canada, were they a bit sexier than that?
They're a bit sexier than that. And I lived in Calgary in Alberta for years, and the Calgary Stampede, where there was a whole bunch of men dressed up as cowboys with the cowboy boots and the hats and the
Did you cause the stampede?
I did a little bit. There's some nice eye candy. Let me just say.
This is the thing, and we're all too scared to say that we like it, I think, because one of the women, there was quoted in this article, said, and she's a criminal defence lawyer, she said she's into cowboy romance. She said, I grew up in Brooklyn, but there's something about being totally transported, something about that wide open space, a man riding on a horseback, a woman falling for him. I'm a sucker for that, and that is Yellowstone.
Absolutely.
And when you think about even like Jane Austen, she was probably, she is a romance writer, but because it was about satire and because she used clever language and she had an opinion about things, that was seen as quality.
That was
writing.
Literature,
and which it is. But if you put a vampire in there instead of Mr. Darcy, it's chick lit and it's a little bit shameful.
And a ripped bodice on the cover.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting, isn't it, where we are, that all this stuff, I've always thought actually that 50 Shades of Grey was really a romance because sure, there was a lot of sex in it. Whew, I had to reread it many times. But the through line, it is like those Jane Eyre. It's like all those old books, literature.
Yes, those old things.
That I think it's almost like a young ingenue, a young naive girl catches the eye of a stern older man and it's, can she turn him to love her? And you discover at the end he's loved her all along but hasn't been able to show it. It's so attractive.
And there's such a recipe to it, isn't it? It's just, there's going to be true love, there's going to be challenge, there's going to be loss and gain. It's all those things that happen.
It can be overly consuming. And as a psychologist, I want to ask you this. In the same way that women are threatened by men watching porn, but men will say this has no bearing on real life. If women are obsessed with romance and relationships that are so full on, does that impact on how we actually live, or is it the same sort of thing as I know the difference between real and pornography?
I really think that line is getting so blurred between kind of what we expect in the world. I mean, we've got people on Instagram and Facebook and all those kinds of social media platforms where they're showing this kind of A game where, I'm in love and here's my perfect partner and here's this. And I think it really creates these expectations. And then you look at your partner and he's, the fourth day where he's, been galumping around the house and he hasn't done the chores that you wanted him to do, and it's this and it's that, and it just doesn't match that created expectation that isn't reality.
It's interesting. We know it's not reality, but I wonder how damaging it can be, because you may not even realize that you're going to bed at 7 o'clock to read your romance book and your husband's staying watching TV downstairs, or you shut down your relationship at home because you want to live more in your romance world. Maybe this is what people do when they're playing games online. I've never been a computer person, but that's the same thing. So kind of escaping your real relationships maybe.
Well, it's really interesting that I was reading this book about dopamine, and it's this addiction psychiatrist. Her name is Anna Lemke, and fascinating book. I've listened to a couple of podcasts that she's been in, and she talked about in the book how she got absolutely addicted to erotica and like mostly about vampire romance. Her gateway drug was the Twilight series. But then she said that she got to the point where she was around the house, she had medical journals, and inside it, she had like a little romance novel so that she could go and pretend that she was reading a medical journal and being really smart rather than, reading this crazy romance novel. And that she had gone, and she talked about a time where she had gone off for a family function with friends, and that she had reclused herself into a little room so that she could just go and read these romance. She was reading in between seeing clients, and she was an addiction psychiatrist and didn't realize it, had no kind of recognition that her own behavior was that addictive.
So what she had was an addiction. It wasn't just that she was into reading these books. Does it have the same physiological effect as it does if you're addicted to alcohol or something?
Absolutely. There are some physical things that are different when you're, on heroin or fentanyl or whatever, but it really is affecting that dopamine system that we have, and that there is this seesaw that we have between pleasure and pain, and that as, we can maybe start with a compulsion to do something or a desire to do something, but when we move into addiction, that there tends to be higher tolerance, like you need more and more to get the same hit. I think you were saying the other day that you'd started rereading parts of a book that you had liked.
Yeah, I've been going through this recently, and I think because I'm in a long-term relationship, I've suddenly started to get all hot and bothered. Well, it started with a book called Romantic Comedy, which is written, I think it's Curtis Sittenden.
Yeah, book club guy. Yeah, yeah.
It's a woman, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, and we read her for book club, so it's literary in that, good book in that. Mm-hmm. And the book was so fantastic, but what I loved about it, it was a woman who worked for all intents and purposes, Saturday Night Live. She's a writer, and she watches male writers who look average crack on to all the famous stars that come on the show.
Much younger.
And that constantly happens in that world. And she said she's an average-looking, smart, funny woman, but that never happens. And then this sort of guy who's been famous for a number of years, this rock star, comes on the show, and she feels a thing for him but can't believe that he'd feel it for her. Then lockdown happens and they write each other a series of emails. I got so swept up in that, so swept up in the romance of that, I almost found myself Googling him to see what his albums were like. He was made up. And then I found myself, when I'd finished the book, I went back and reread it because I wanted that hit again. And then I started watching Outlander, which I started watching 10 years ago when it started and didn't watch much of it. I went back recently and started again and got completely consumed. I had the house to myself for a weekend. I watched the entire first series. I ate my meals on a stable table like an old mole in front of the television, and I pretty much had to attach a drool sponge to my chin for all the drooling I was doing. It was shameful.
This was after you had interviewed Sam Heughan, wasn't it?
And I interviewed him for a movie he'd done, and I thought, oh, he's nice. And then I watched that show and I thought, what a waste of a crush. I wanted to go back and interview him again and somehow viscerally tell him how in love I was. But I was in love with the character he plays, Jamie. And
Absolutely.
I reckon that even Sam Heughan, who's the actor, can't live up to being Jamie. Because Jamie is this character who will defend you to the end of the earth. That's what women seem to want, don't they? It doesn't matter how liberated we are, we're still going for that protection stuff.
I think in our minds we are. I think in reality there are women who are kind of claiming their power and saying, no, I don't want that. There was that article about, the Barbie, Beyonce, Taylor Swift thing that is basically, that divorce rates are coming up.
Yeah, more
because
breakups.
Of that. Yeah.
Because women are saying, you know what, I've finding my feet and I'm not happy with where I am. Mm. Oh, it's just exhausting being alive, isn't it?
It truly is. Don't know where to place myself.
If there was an actual guy who spoke to you as the way men speak in books, if you say, I love you, and they go ditto, and you go, oh, I want you to say, I love you till the stars fall out of the sky. I can't breathe again until you're in my arms. If a guy actually spoke to you like that, you go, where do you get off, you creep?
Yeah. We would actually be probably texting the police or calling the police and saying, come and get this guy, he's stalking me.
I know. Oh, it's a funny old world, isn't it? the kind of thing. So if you'd like to join us, it's called Double A Chattery. Search for Double A Chattery wherever you're listening to this podcast right now, and I'll see you there.